One of the most well-known crypto influencers has now sold everything, house, stocks, and so on to buy more Bitcoin. Massive announcement from Donald Trump. We've got a massive exchange hack. One of the biggest crypto exchanges has just been attacked. Eric Trump says Bitcoin is going to go parabolic. We're on the verge of a breakout. We have more bullish developments that we need to take a look at. We still don't really know exactly where things are headed, do we? Is all of this right now just some kind of fake out, a bull trap, or are we really heading back toward new all-time highs? Let's dive into the whole thing now. Before we really get started here, take a second, smash that like button down below for higher Bitcoin prices and new all-time highs, and as a thank you, I'll show you the bullish coconut. Who stole the coconut? Now, we've got some very, very interesting moves here. The futures in the US are opening positive. Bitcoin is holding the price level at around 91,000 here. Donald Trump with a massive change here. Income taxes in the US are supposed to be completely abolished. The whole thing is probably going to be financed through tariffs. He apparently really wants to build a new economic system here. Is this the big reset? That would also mean even more debt. On the other hand, people would have more money to invest. That means actually this is bullish for Bitcoin. We also have Russia's President Putin here, who says, "We agree Trump's Ukraine peace plan can be used as a basis for future agreements." So we're now at a good level here because there's a chance to come to an agreement. This is probably also very, very good for the global markets, even though there isn't a final deal yet and we still need to be cautious. And here you can see it right away. One of the biggest crypto influencers, Crypto Banner, says here, cryptocurrencies have now lost billions of market capitalization. Now's the time to get in. I sold everything.
A few days ago, I sold everything. I sold stocks, I sold property, I sold assets, I even sold a kidney so I could land up buying more crypto.
So he sold everything, even a kidney in Berlin, just to buy more Bitcoin. That's what Sale said too. Sell your kidneys, buy even more Bitcoin with it. Of course, that's not meant seriously, that's obvious. Is that really the right move? I would never recommend that you just follow random people in trading. But we've just seen this correction. A lot of people just assume that this wasn't it yet, because it would be really weird to enter a bear market without even having gone through a euphoria phase. We keep seeing it here. Not your keys, not your coins. Here's the Korean exchange. Upbit got hacked here. And of course, no Bitcoin was stolen here, but Solana was. But this just shows that Bitcoin could have been stolen at any time here as well. Get your Bitcoin off the exchanges. I'll put a hardware wallet link for you below. Right now, there are even Black Friday discounts at TREZOR. Definitely take advantage, up to 40% off. The link is down in the description. So you don't recklessly put your coins at risk here, because if Bitcoin really takes off and let's say makes massive gains and you end up losing your Bitcoin on the exchange, that would be really, really bad, even if all the losses were covered. But you always have to be careful with these kinds of exchange hacks. Now we have a very, very bullish statement from Investment Punk about Bitcoin, why he too is in the bull camp. More and more people are now in the bull camp.
Bitcoin is higher than it was before Donald Trump was elected. So we're not in crisis territory right now. The American economy is also growing. The European one, not necessarily, but things are going relatively well in America. And if the Fed now pours even more fuel on an already booming economy, so to speak, adds oil or gasoline to the fire, you can imagine that things could really take off, and that could really fuel the bubble. So don't underestimate, in the midst of all the pessimistic sentiment on the stock markets, and especially in the crypto markets, it can also go the other way, because the Fed's policies regarding interest rates and the purchase of government bonds still have the biggest impact here.
And I actually find that a very interesting assessment, because the likelihood of rate cuts is now increasing. QT will end in December, and then we have all the stimulus packages that have been announced. Donald Trump has announced stimulus packages, $2,000 in helicopter money. He said he's going to pump $20 trillion into the market. Then we have stimulus packages from Japan and from China as well. In Canada, where QE's even starting up again. That means interest rates will go down worldwide. We also have the decision from Jerome Powell, who will probably be replaced as well, and replaced by a hawkish Fed representative who could also potentially be a Bitcoiner. And anyone in this environment who doesn't have hard assets like Bitcoin and the like could end up in a really bad spot, while Bitcoin holders could benefit massively. On the other hand, we have Senator Cynthia Lummis here, who says that the national debt of $30 trillion, which isn't even accurate, it's actually much higher, stands as a financial catastrophe for our grandchildren, and that we need to build an orange shield to protect against it, simply so that we can bring healthy children and a healthy family into the world. Of course, that's always a very, very interesting topic. In the past, it was easy for a single breadwinner to support an entire family. Today, that's much, much more difficult. Taking on the whole endeavor of supporting a family as the sole earner is a real challenge now. Now we have BlackRock, which currently holds 155 million US dollars of IBIT in its own funds. That means an increase of 14% compared to June. That means they're advising their clients to limit their Bitcoin exposure while quietly accumulating Bitcoin themselves. Pay attention to their actions, not their words. I found that to be a very, very interesting assessment from TF. They're saying here that BlackRock tells people to have just a 1 to 2% allocation, but they're buying up Bitcoin in a big way. But you also have to say the post is a bit exaggerated. If we look at BlackRock's allocation right now, in my opinion, they're actually still below their own recommendation. Just because they're buying large amounts of Bitcoin now doesn't mean they're anywhere near hitting that 1 to 2% threshold. In relation to all their assets under management, because you always have to put it in perspective, it sounds pretty wild, of course. Ordering Bitcoin, increasing it by 100 or 200 million or something like that. Yeah, sure. But if you have assets under management in the trillions, then 100 million really isn't that big of a deal in comparison. So you always have to put things in perspective. And now we have Eric Trump here, who's totally freaking out, who's super bullish, who's really saying, guys, something really, really big is coming our way.
Big believer that Bitcoin's going to continue to skyrocket. If we didn't believe that Bitcoin over the next 5 years was going to absolutely fly and go parabolic, we shouldn't be in this business. We believe in the asset with every ounce of our heart. And
that's a really, really strong statement. That also shows, again, really look at the incentives that are present in this market. He says here, we believe in Bitcoin with all our heart. He says here, we think it's going to go parabolic, that it's going to skyrocket. We invest in Bitcoin. We live Bitcoin. We're all in on Bitcoin. And this is coming from the president's son. And you really have to listen closely to that. Because the thing is, by now, the investment in Bitcoin is so big that it can't be underestimated anymore. That means all those people who always say, yeah, Bitcoin could be banned, it could be stopped, and so on. Do you really think that Donald Trump, Eric Trump, Larry Fink, BlackRock, and so on, if they keep increasing their Bitcoin allocations, that they're going to somehow make Bitcoin disappear from the face of the earth or something like that? That's just getting more and more unlikely. On the other hand, of course, there's the other problem. If they end up owning too much Bitcoin, then the critics will start speaking up again. Yes, they can manipulate the price of Bitcoin. Yes, up until now, they can, of course, manipulate the price of Bitcoin, but they don't want to manipulate it downward. They're positioned long on Bitcoin, not short. And they can't change the rules of the Bitcoin network anyway.
November 20th of 2029.
What will the price of Bitcoin be that day?
Oh, God. In a 4-year period of time?
Come up with your own number.
Oh, God. I think we'll be above 500,000.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I do.
What do you think?
Eric Trump also said Bitcoin will rise to 1 million, and Bitcoin will probably go much higher, but you have to take it one step at a time. And as we can see right now, there's still this crazy resistance at 100,000, or we haven't even managed to really break through it fundamentally yet. A lot of people thought we were already there, but now we've fallen back below it. So now we have to buy our way or fight our way back up again. But Eric Trump, well, he's in it for the long haul, ultra political. What's also very, very interesting is that tomorrow the markets are only partially open. Yesterday the markets weren't open at all, and tomorrow they're only partially open. It's always pretty funny when we compare that to Bitcoin. Whenever I hear these stories, yeah, markets are open, sometimes they're not, sometimes there's a holiday, sometimes someone's sick, this and that, whatever. Bitcoin is never sick. Bitcoin is never closed. Bitcoin is always open 24/7. That's the really, really big advantage we have. What I also find really, really interesting right now is that we're really seeing a split between the strong hands and the weak hands. So lately, I've talked to a lot of people, for example, who have sold all their Bitcoin. For example, Anton Richard, whom I interviewed, talked about why he sold all his Bitcoin, because he thinks Bitcoin has been hijacked, because he believes Wall Street has taken over, KYC, the government, and so on. That makes things difficult for Bitcoin holders. And that's totally legitimate. If someone comes to that conclusion, then they should sell all their Bitcoin. On the other hand, there are now also a lot of people who are actually trying to leverage even outside capital to go even harder into Bitcoin. Like we heard earlier, taking out a loan on a kidney and so on, putting everything into Bitcoin. Have we already seen the bottom? Of course, nobody knows that. Maybe we've already seen the bottom, but generally what we've learned from the past is that these pullbacks, when there was a 30% drop, have always been buy the dip opportunities. They've been opportunities. And sure, it can happen that after buying at a 30% drop, we go down to a 50% drop. But at some point, Bitcoin will stabilize again. It's going to be really, really interesting now, because with this dip, we might be able to see how the Bitcoin markets could behave in the future. Is it really possible that we'll see such extreme pullbacks again? In my opinion, we can only see these really extreme pullbacks if we also have the same kind of over-exaggeration on the upside. We can't see an 80% pullback if we haven't even seen any over-exaggeration on the upside yet. Of course, we could see a 30% correction, a 40% correction, but in my opinion, right now, we can't see an 80 or 90% correction because we haven't had that kind of exaggerated upside. We didn't even have that kind of upside exaggeration where everyone jumped in the Bitcoin, where everyone was pawning their kidneys, everyone was talking about Bitcoin, everyone was saying, yay, Bitcoin is going to 10 million, and so on. Right now, we're also seeing a lot of people who are getting unsettled by the price, and on the other hand, people who are really doing their homework, who see that the fundamentals are actually better than ever, with the hash rate at an all-time high. They see, hey, okay, big institutional players are involved. Even JP Morgan is now long on Bitcoin after they pushed the Bitcoin price down. We've got, BlackRock, Donald Trump, and so on, who are pro-Bitcoin. We've got the first nation, or not the first nation, but the first U.S. state that's buying Bitcoin. That's how you have to put it. And next year, we might even see a strategic Bitcoin reserve, although by now I tend to temper my expectations a bit on that. But there are just so many crazy things happening in the background. That's where we really see the big difference right now. Some people are just focused on the price and start to panic, while other people are really focused on the fundamentals, don't panic, and are now drawing conclusions that, in my opinion, make much more sense in the long run. Namely, asking themselves, how could I raise even more capital to buy Bitcoin? If you have a long-term time horizon, that should really always be the only question. Not when should I sell my Bitcoin, but how can I accumulate more capital to buy even more Bitcoin? Of course, this is not financial advice. Do whatever you think is right with your money. This is just my perspective on things. If you still want to buy Bitcoin now, I'll put a link down below to 21 Bitcoin. There, you can simply and securely buy Bitcoin, use Bitcoin Intel, and save up to 20% on fees when purchasing Bitcoin. And I'll see you around. Peace out.